Hello and welcome to Both is Good, a podcast where DMs, GMs, lore keepers, and anyone who runs tabletop games talk to each other about how they run their games. I'm Adam, and I've been running my game mostly by the book.
And I'm Siera, and I barely read the book.
And this is a nice opportunity for us to pick each other's brains about the various ways we run our D&D 5e games and to just hang out a little bit.
Hanging out. I feel like we need a little, jingle in that moment. I just wrote it, I guess.
Yeah. We're just two DMs. We play D&D 5e the way that we play it. It's okay to disagree with us and run D&D 5e games the way you like it. This is just kind of an opportunity to hear what other DMs are doing. And, maybe you're inspired by some of our ideas. Maybe you absolutely hate some of our other ideas, and that's cool. We're not telling you how to play D&D here.
You can play D&D however you want.
Yeah. We are going to keep playing D&D the way we want. So, that in mind, how was your D&D this last couple weeks?
Oh, man. This question always catches me off guard, even though I know we talk about it every time we record.
Yeah.
Let me look at my calendar, actually.
Time is a weird thing.
That's how busy I am.
Complicated soup.
Okay, so we had the podcast game.
Mm-hmm.
That was fun.
Yeah.
We can talk about it. It'll be out by the time this comes out.
Yeah.
Which is so nice, actually. It's kind of relieving to know that we can't spoil it.
Yeah. We don't have to censor what we talk about in regards to the podcast.
I made a little comment on our Discord, in our internal thing about the amount of sighs of relief and nerves that Godfrey makes in that episode.
Yeah.
I thought it was a lot of fun.
It was good. It was a good one. It was a nice trap in the room, an obvious trap. How are we going to spring this? How are we going to disarm this? Mm-hmm. It's good to walk through that process and let people who are solving it solve it and not try to. That's my hardest part for me playing as a player, is having an idea about how to disarm the trap, but instead yes-anding. You're yes, use my silver short sword, and yes, just scratch it out. We're going to stand around the corner in case things go wrong.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. That's a thing. And then I am editing those episodes right now, so I've been doing that. And there was an interesting Nat 1 moment that in session I didn't think about, but in editing I was like, oh, Adam rolled a Nat 1 and I made him fall prone.
That's fine. That's the way you run Nat 1s, and I'm okay with that.
Are you?
I won't make a fuss over it because it's your table. You're allowed to play with Nat 1s the way you want. You and the Saturday game both have had that happen in the last couple combats we've been in. Both of them I've rolled Nat 1s. Both of them I've ended up on the ground. Things happen. Things happen. That's fine.
It's great.
Yeah.
And then after that, we played the Saturday game, which I went into that session wanting it to be an RP heavy session and left it. And this kind of ties into a little bit of what we're going to talk about today, but I left it wanting to have an above table conversation with the party, but I'm not the DM. So I feel like that's weird for me to initiate about Margot's just blatant non-understanding of magic and whether or not it's dumb that you all are trying to figure out how general blood hunter mechanics work, which I know because I can read them on my sheet, but it's this weird meta thing that I've never experienced before at the table. That's interesting and different.
Yeah. No, and as another player, I completely understand that Margot has no idea how it works, and that's why he wants to do that. That is completely understood.
Mm-hmm. I just felt bad because we spent like 20 minutes of like checks and like lore and information, which was, I loved. I was eating it up. I was like, yes. About like her, I forget what it's called. I'd have to read the sheet, but like magic on her bow.
Yeah, no, like that. If you were thinking of feeling bad about that, I would not feel bad about that, because that's an opportunity, I think, both for Cherry's character and for my character to be like, how can we dissect this weird magic that she doesn't understand at all, and then replicate it in our own ways and try to make something cool and interesting and like homebrewy.
Hell yeah.
That.
I love it.
Yeah, never feel bad about that. I thought that was like a great part of that session.
That was a good one. And then we had the Wednesday game yesterday, which got
I saw some tweets.
Scary.
Yeah, I saw that. Rare Trick went down 3 times?
Yeah, okay, let me describe this for you. Rare Trick, right. The party comes upon 2 Aramites trying to break into someone's house. Mm-hmm. They're like 80 foot away from them. And being a tabaxi, our bard, who had incorrect HP the same way that Avis had incorrect HP from D&D Beyond, uses their race stats to jump onto the back of one of them, claw them in the ass, and then jump away. Everyone else is way back there.
All right. Yeah.
And she was up every time her turn came back around. But
That's
instantly
impressive.
Just went back down.
Yeah, but still got to take her turns. Wow.
Yeah. And
generous.
I had like, it's not the first, but one of those rare moments as a DM where I'm like, these creatures are fucking evil and they've seen this cat stand up twice now since it's been dead. He's going to stomp on her as he runs away to go attack someone else. And everyone was like, no, don't do it. And I was like, he's going to do it. This thing keeps coming back to life. This thing is evil. So it was fun. It was a hoot.
Sounds good.
Yeah. How were your weeks in D&D?
They were good. See, last couple of weeks. Oh my gosh, the cabin weekend was 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Time doesn't work right. Someone needs to check on it. So the Friday group, we're trying to yearly. This was the second year of doing it. We go up north and do a D&D weekend at a cabin where, if everyone can make it, we play 1 session game every day that we're up there. And we basically play 5 sessions or like 4 sessions in 4 days. And it like really accelerates the story forward. Unfortunately, this year, a couple people couldn't make it because of conflicts. So the 3 of us who did go up there, we played a couple one-shots. I ran one, which the party completely just decided to avoid everything and
love it.
Find the combats and just invisible their way past them. And then we're really confused at the conclusion of the one shot and not really understanding what it is they were supposed to do because they skipped all of the combat and didn't talk to anyone about what was going on and just kind of solved it themselves. But, that was their characters. That made sense. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes you set something up and the party just goes, no, we're gonna force this and then be confused. And they get the reward of not having any of the combat encounters, but they get the punishment of not understanding what's happening. So, it's a trade-off. That went well. And then our friend Morgus ran a one-shot the last day we were there, and that was pretty fun. I got to use a level 12 version of the Saturday game character mechanically, but we only did 1 fight. So didn't really get to do anything with him. But got to RP, and that was fun.
Nice.
Then podcast game, always great, pretty fun. feel like everyone's kind of revealing a little more. I feel like Godfrey's going a little over the edge in this episode that's coming out. It'll be interesting to see how we resolve it. Like, that's all I'm thinking about. Is I want to play the next podcast episode so we can progress from where we are. Because I mean, what are they gonna do? What are they gonna do with Medusa in a pack? Like, I have no control over what happens with it. Yeah, Medusa,
really just
quotation marks.
Mentally unstable satyr woman who you knocked unconscious and shoved into a bag of holding and snuck out of this building, and you're now like on the streets of Florencia. But
that's because they were trying to take things from us and were very aggressive after we asked them questions. Like,
well, Ziba straight up said that she had Medusa's crown.
Yeah, which we also say that very clearly if that crown goes on that satyr's head, it becomes Medusa. Like, that's very clearly what's going on here. But I don't think we want that. Like, the worst part is, too, is, like, I know in my brain and in Godfrey's brain, like, oh, I'm in connection with Erebus, and now Erebus knows that this is happening here. And I wasn't part of the mushroom one-shot, but I heard about a scene that supposedly happens in the mushroom one-shot and why that might be particularly, information that Erebus might want. So part of me is panicking because that's happening probably at some point. I don't know how, but something's going to happen there. Might be compromising, but I mean, listeners, if they're watching the podcast, probably already know how that plays out.
Yeah.
God, time is weird.
Time is weird.
But so that was podcast game. Sunday, we are still in limbo. I think we're starting kind of like a mini campaign that a different DM is going to be running on Sunday. So I've built out a character for that. I'm playing a druid shifter, which should be fun. We're all playing as carnival folk, so he's the animal tamer. And because he's a circle of shepherd druid, he can just talk to animals. Yeah. So he's just friends with the animals. And sometimes he just becomes the trained animal that's performing. That should be fun. But last week we played a familiar problem, the one shot that was developed by Critical Role. That was pretty fun. For the viewers on Twitch, this is the person who ran it did nice art mock-ups of everyone's familiars that they were playing.
That's really cute.
So, yeah, it was great. That was a fun time. Friday game met. I've thrown them through a loop. They've been tracking down this coven of hags like for a long time. They've been constantly running into them. And then as they were trying to figure out where they were, they received an invitation from the hags to come to their location. And so the party was like, I don't like that. And then the night before they got there, the hag visited them peacefully in each of their dreams and were like, hey, here's what's going on. If you stay outside this arc, we've got patrols going around. They're going to be aggressive. You're going to want to come inside. It's going to be a great time. To which the party was also like, I don't like this. Maybe we should just go. But, they eventually went in, they went through, and they were probably expecting, hag horribleness. But what they found was hag Ren Fair. There's just like a carnival going on, people having a great time, and they hate it even more now because why isn't there weird shit happening? And it's I've put them so far on the back foot. They go in, they try to investigate. All of the information for what the hags are trying to do is laid out in front of them, easily accessible for the party to know. And they're so in their heads. They're like, what are they doing? Where's the deceit here? What are they trying to pull on us? And it's the perfect.
Yes.
So we left off right before they were about to have dinner with the entire coven, which is a coven of 13 hags in total, which has them all panicking because they recognized the number that was there and how that's pretty bad news for them if they try to be aggressive there. So,
excuse me.
They've come up with some good schemes and good plans, and they learned the hags are trying to like shift the Feywild into the material plane and unlock a prison dimension where Baba Yaga is being held. And so they're like, yeah, they've got a cool plan. So that's going well. picking up where we left off there tomorrow.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I think that's my week.
I forgot to say one more session that I played in D&D, and it's we played a Wednesday game session. Since the last time we recorded, that was just like a loose one shot. Maybe we did talk about it. It was run online, like a written online one shot.
Yeah.
And I got to play my College of Creation bard that I just, have around. Mm-hmm. And she's chaotic and also is a one shot, so I just allow myself to fuck off when I'm in those. And I was like, I've always been curious what a party would do if someone did this. And so in the middle of this combat against this like guard on the road and his wolves, she cast Disguise Self on herself to look like him, and then went and grappled him and rolled him around on the ground, and then they stood up and I couldn't tell it was him.
Nice.
It was fun.
Yeah. That's a cool idea.
Chaos Goblin.
Yes.
Anyway, speaking of bards,
we're talking about magic systems. Part 2.
Magic. Part 2.
Today we're hoping to talk about bards, wizards, sorcerers, and artificers, but we'll see where we get.
We will see where we get. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, but we can organically start with bards, since I just mentioned it. It's at the top of your list. So I think does the PHB talk about how bards get their magic?
They do, and it's one of the more interesting. I was about to pull it up on a PDF, but I brought my books out just for this reason.
Heck yeah!
They have a very interesting ideal for how their magic is performed. So, am I able to just quote word for word from this, since it's public knowledge?
We're being very clear that we're citing this from the Player's Handbook, written by Wizards of the Coast.
And also, if you go on D&D Beyond, you can access and read this rulebook for free, I believe, especially the forewords for all of the classes. So, so it reads from Music and Magic. In the worlds of D&D, words and music are not just vibrations of air, but vocalizations with power all their own. The bard is a master of song, speech, and the magic they contain. Bards say that the multiverse was spoken into existence, and that the words of the gods gave it shape, and that echoes of these primordial words of creation still resound throughout the cosmos, with words of creation being capitalized as like a thing. The music of bards is an attempt to snatch and harness those echoes subtly woven into their spells and powers. So the magic source, if we go back to last week's episode of magic, for the bards is essentially that raw magic that is typically untappable unless you have access to the weave. That's how I interpret that.
Yeah, that's how I interpret it as well, which is why, and the whole point is to get into this. Like, when I was thinking about the creation of Rickmonish in my world, that's why bards are kind of the first level. Bards and sorcerers are like the first level of magic activation in the world. Like, a bard feels an emotion or does a dance move or paints a specific painting that taps into this word of creation or source of creation, depending on the type of bard, and it poofs this thing into existence that then gets trickled through the other practitioners of magic as they go. In terms of like arcane magic is specifically what we're talking about today. Yeah.
I don't know how much I could talk on this topic based on the campaign that I'm running and what is happening in it. Because one of the key things that my players know about right now is something that a different character has noted in the book as a mode of creation. And it's in my ideal, I've taken those words of creation as very much like the seeds of all worlds. And it's this primal force that is supposed to remain hidden and is supposed to all be used up, but there are sections of it that still lay untapped.
Ooh.
So, and what bards do is some of them like hear the song and like that's what they follow. But not all bards, because I do have a bard in the party and that hasn't been an exploratory part of their story.
Yeah.
But it's because I think like that specific idea, I lean more towards specifically the College of Creation. Like that's kind of their go-to. And the rest of bards kind of access that without fully understanding what they're accessing.
Yeah, I would say for sure that creation bards are the most tapped in terms of like the subclasses. But at the same time, like I have a homebrewed bard in the Wednesday game, a College of Dirge bard or Death bard. I forget which homebrew exactly Liz is playing for Rare Trick. She calls herself a eulogy bard. So she writes the eulogies and performs eulogies for families and living people when folks have passed. And to think about that, like that as a mote of creation as well is really interesting. You like really dive into like cycle of life and like death and what that means in terms of like magic in the world, and it's been really fun. So I've never had a College of Creation bard in a Rick Monish campaign, so I try to keep it open in that like if it were a session 0 and someone was like, I want to play a bard in Rick Monish, I'd just be like, okay, your magic is just, you just find it through your means of focus, whether that's an instrument, your ballet point shoes, your paintbrush, your, what have you, your vocal cords, your voice, rather than like pulling it from other sources. Yeah.
Instead of just like learning it like through the college aspect of bards.
I think of like bardic college is more of like curated experimentation. So it's like Livy went to college and was a professor as a lore bard. And that's certainly a different thing. But he's pulling his knowledge and magic from the weaves around the history of the world. He's able to like find little bits of information and pluck and pull and create what he needs from story, from narrative, from lore. And he was able to do that in college in like a safe space. Like I like to think about across the board on the classes we're talking about today, like the college aspect is the lab, essentially. Like if you've ever taken a college course with a lab and a lecture section, and then the world itself is the lecture. So like you could certainly get by with only ever experiencing magic through the world as a bard, but it might be more chaotic and like maybe you don't fully understand how it's coming versus like in a lab scenario where the walls are protected and you can't expose people to things and you can't hurt other folks, like all of those types of protections around you. Yeah.
I also like have this idea of, I think it goes back to an interview that was done at some point where some of the designers were talking about the spell command. Where command can be this magical thing, or it's just like the force of presence of the person who's telling you to do something. It's just that charismatic force of like, I'm telling you to do something in an authoritative way, and you're just going to listen. So I kind of also have that idea of a potential power source for just bards. It's like it's a force of their own charisma that's allowing them to have these effects on the world that don't seem innately magical, because it's just their words and their weaving, but the way that the magic work is just more subtle than, you know, a practitioner plucking at magic and forcing like electricity to spawn into being.
Man, you just reminded me of something from my IRL life.
Oh.
I feel like I'm a dick if I tell this story. I mean, I'm going to tell it anyway because I think it's funny. But I think most folks know I'm in a band. And like, I am a rogue bard. I don't know. I'm a bard something, multi-class. And my partner plays also in my band and a bunch of other bands. And when we lived back in the Midwest, we knew of a town where a celebrity lived, and he was throwing a party. And out of sheer will alone, we literally just walked past security into the party. They never stopped us. Like, didn't give us a second look. Hands in the pockets, just walk in like you're supposed to be there, you know? Yeah. Which I guess could also be kind of roguey. I don't know, like... But that's what it reminds me of. Like, there are people in the world. I don't think I'm one of them most of the time. I think it was mostly my partner. Yeah. But there are people in the world who just like can do stuff like that. And that is like a cool parallel into fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you have any more notes on bards and the way they use their magic and the kind of magic they tap into in your world?
No, I would say from like a lore keeper, world building, like GM perspective, the last little cherry I would put on like my take on it would be make sure to custom, like whatever it is, if you have someone who wants to play a bard at your table, don't like, there's a lot of language in the PHB that focuses on like music or voice focused bards. And you don't have to play that kind of a bard. That's been proven time and time again. And it's pretty simple to just allow your character to be creative or help them be creative in ways that you're comfortable with, to have them be bards that aren't music or singing or like voice performance type bards.
Yeah, absolutely. Always, like, we're also talking about the way magic works in our world for these classes, but that in no way hamstrings my players' creativity for what they want to spin into it. Like, if they have a cool spin and an idea that they want to go for a bard that doesn't fit into like the box that I've made, I'm just going to expand the box, or I'm going to create something that makes sense for them to work. Yeah. Because that's what's most fun for the players at the table. Like, be cool, like world build for yourself and have like this idea that you could tell them if they're thinking about something vaguely, and you could like be like, oh, well, I have this and this idea for how this works in my world. What kind of, like, do any of those speak to you and like the concept that you're working with, or do you have like this different idea? Like, always have those conversations, because that's how you get the most impactful stories, in my experience.
Yeah. The creation bard I was talking about is a painter, and her magic is flavored like those old Crayola crayon commercials from when we were kids in the 90s, where like it was weird paint blobs that like circled around like that. She has like paintbrushes in her hair and she just pulls them out, and like, yeah. A dance bard seems really intriguing to me. I know they exist. I've never seen one or played with one, or like, that's really cool too, you know?
Yeah.
A fire spinning bard, a hula hoop bard, like anything.
Yeah. I think I had a bard built up that I never played that was a fire eater.
Yes.
That was just kind of neat. And also the first bard, I think the first bard I really played with in 5e was also a painter bard, but it was like a glamour bard. Which was like a cool and like interesting take on it, because the player didn't know how to like present themselves as a charismatic character. You know, sometimes the charisma of the character doesn't match the charisma of the player, and the player understands that. So you shouldn't hold that against your players.
No one's here. No one here's 20 charisma. If you think you are, you're not. Hot takes. Don't at us.
Yeah.
What's next?
Okay. Wizards. Or
Wizards.
I guess if we're going alphabetically, we've already messed up because it would be Artificer. Well, now there's absolutely no order because we went from B to W and then back to S. So, here we go.
Here we go. It's chaos.
We kind of talked about Wizards last time.
We did a little bit, yeah.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, so the book reads that wizards are scholars of the arcane. Wild and enigmatic, varied in form and function, the power of magic draws students who seek to master its mysteries. Some aspire to become like the gods, shaping reality itself. Through the casting of a typical spell requires merely the utterance of a few strange words, fleeting gestures, and sometimes a pinch or clump of exotic materials. These surface components barely hint at the expertise attained after years of apprenticeship and countless hours of study. Wizards live and die by their spells. Everything else is secondary. They learn new spells as they experiment and grow in experience. They can also learn them from other wizards, from ancient tomes or inscriptions, and from ancient creatures such as the Fae that are steeped in magic.
Dum, dum, dum.
Yeah.
Well, we did talk a little bit about like wizards in your world and how they're kind of weird and rare, eccentric folks.
The wizards are more common.
Oh, okay, good.
In the world. It's a world that's been around for a very long time, and magic has been around for a very long time. So they've wildly experimented with magic, and there are some places that are very, very advanced magically, and other places that have receded or countercultured to the magic, assuming that magic is the root of everything wrong,
Yeah. Sweet.
Well, I don't think we talked about wizards in your world too much.
We didn't. Wizards in my world are essentially, I imagine them, and there hasn't been a player that's challenged me on this or evolved past this, but they're kind of the next in line after the bards. In my world, the bard colleges and the wizard colleges really are either very close together in proximity or sometimes share buildings and share tomes and share books. But yeah, they get their knowledge simply from learning. There's a learning aspect to everything. I guess Daniel kind of broke that with Morgus in a way, which I can't say much more about, but he's learning in his own Morgus way. I think we've talked about this, but for some reason in my brain, this is not me as a DM, but me as a player. Whenever I make a freaking wizard, I feel like I have to only take spells from the college in which the wizard is associated with, which isn't a thing, but it's just a thing in my brain. Mm-hmm. Because I like organization.
I think it used to be a thing in 3.5.
Oh, really?
You chose a school to specialize in, and then you chose a school that you didn't touch. And you couldn't choose magic from the school that you chose to exclude, but from the school that you chose to take, you got extra benefits. I might be wrong on that. It's been a long time since I've looked at those 3.5 books on wizards. Yeah,
I mean, that's literally how I thought about it when I made my wizard Magdalena, is just she didn't take any electives. She only showed up for what she needed, Mm. Because if you think about it, if it is a learned thing, that makes a lot of sense. If it, and Rick Bonish, the knowledge for wizards isn't really sacred or locked down, but it's in the colleges and you have to be accepted, and there is security at a college. Sure, someone could break it and maybe learn some stuff, but they're going to get caught eventually unless they're really, really sneaky or very charismatic. So yeah, that's really as simple as it is in Rick Monish. I don't have any other rules or regulations around it. How do you, if you had a player that came to you, I feel like this is one from a DM perspective, And
Yeah.
they said they wanted to choose a components pouch instead of a focus.
Mm-hmm.
How would you ensure that they were like always had access to what they needed?
I would treat it just like the focus. Like,
Hmm.
because all of the spells have like a component that's like a non-money amount component for a spell that, not all spells, but spells that require material components, right? So if they have a no cost, I just assume for them that buying the components pouch, that pouch has whatever they need conveniently on it. It's like a Batman utility belt for spell components. And like, without having to RP it every time you go back to a city, part of the initial cost of that components pouch is the ability to refill it for free whenever they go to a town. So like the only thing they'd have to purchase if they wanted to heavy RP purchasing spell components is the ones that had a gold cost to it.
Mm-hmm.
So like if their spell requires, a diamond worth at least 50 gold pieces to cast like Chromatic Orb, like they'd have to go buy that. Like that would have to be something you'd have to find, depending on the world. In my section of the world, diamonds are rare. So that would definitely be kind of a conflict of having to find it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like I don't hold that as, like I don't make that any more difficult for them than having a focus.
Yeah. For me, it's the same. If it's like a pearl or a diamond, something that has a gold value, they'll need to find that and purchase that.
Mm-hmm.
But if they want, like, I'm thinking about like campaign 2 of the huge D&D thing and the wizard in that. And like he was constantly RPing, like going to shops and things in towns and buying the most like mundane things like ink and paper and, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Ash.
Buying the ink and paper is the specific cost for copying a spell into your spell book. So he was RPing the material cost of getting the inks needed to take a spell that he knows and copy it into a spell book.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like this is like a gray area for DMs. What I'm longing all the way around trying to get at is that I think it'd be really interesting to play a wizard where you did have to make a conscious effort in game to find absolutely everything you need for your spells all the time. And it's kind of like goes back to like anyone with a bow just having unlimited arrows. Like that's how it feels for me. And sure, most DMs play like you can pick up your arrows after the fight. You don't have to RP it. You don't have to buy more if you don't want to, kind of a thing. But me leaning a little bit towards like wanting to play like a pretty difficult game. Like I almost would rather prefer that like Margot's arrows break or are lost, or like I have to remember to do that because it adds a higher stake. Not that wizards need higher stakes. It's just something I think about sometimes. And I would leave that totally up to the player because maybe I feel like most players wouldn't find that interesting or fun. But it is something I think about on occasion. Like, what if the wizard had to like go find every herb, every like tiny little piece of things that they need to cast a spell?
Yeah.
Or at least RPs say they go to a store every time they go to town or something.
Yeah. I agreed with that, and I felt like that for a while when I was playing a cleric, because as a cleric, I was looking for all of those material components, because it was my first time playing a spellcaster. So I was like, I need to get these. I need to make sure I'm not doing this. And what it ended up being is we got to a town, and I was like, all right, DM, I need to find this and this and this and this and this and this. And it ended up kind of bogging down the rest of the party's trip into town. Because it's like, how do you make that into a fun game experience instead of just you find the store and roll percentile to see if they have the things that you need, and if not, like, are you gonna make your player be unable to cast a spell because they don't have the material component? And then at like that point, when does it just become easier for them to buy a spell focus, and then they're missing out on kind of the RP of wanting to use all of those reagents, you know?
Yeah, it's certainly a conundrum for DMs. Like,
Yeah.
that's why it should be a conversation with your player. I think that I would lean more towards like, if the player wanted to, like in your scenario, be that intense about their wizard like components for their spells, then I would say all you have to do is remember to tell me that you're going to go shopping when you get to town. We don't have to RP it. You can automatically up all of your resources, and anything that like has a gold value that we've talked about, like a diamond or a pearl that you want to purchase, you can we can have a conversation about that piece specifically. But otherwise, herbs, yada yada yada, we'll just say it's like a copper to refill your component pouch every time you go to town. And all you have to do is remember to tell me that you're going to go do that. We don't have to RP any of it. And then I would probably have the conversation of like, what is your reasoning for this? Do you want to not be able to cast spells if you forget to do this? Like, am I tracking this or are you tracking this? Because it could be a bigger thing. In my case, like with arrows, because I've never played a wizard with a component pouch in a campaign or a caster with a component pouch in a campaign, I want to not be able to shoot arrows if I run out of arrows, you know? Yeah. But this is just me specifically. So yeah, I don't know. Something I think about with wizards a lot for some reason. Yeah. Like, yeah. I mean, and there's spell books. I can see it.
Yeah. Definitely a thing if you have a player who wants to play with that and thinks that would be like a fun thing for them. Just the practical part of my mind, if it ever gets to the point where it's like, oh yeah, just remember when we go into town to tell me that you went to the store, and then you'll do it. At that point, why leverage that you have to remember to do it part?
Yeah.
You know? Because then, you know, you I know for me, eventually you run into the instance where we've left town for a day and then the player's like, oh, I forgot to say that I bought the components. Can we just retcon that I said that I did that?
Yeah.
And the answer is almost always yes, because like, are you going to say no? Because like their character would have remembered to do that when the player, you know, hasn't played in the game for 2 or 3 weeks and had completely forgotten.
It's a tricky thing.
It's hard.
Tricky thing.
Yeah.
What about spell books? How do you feel about like spell books, College of Scribes specifically, like some of these other classes and their animated spell books, things like that? As a DM with a player in your campaign that would have something like that?
I haven't looked too far into it. That is like a cool risk that can be associated with wizards. But I don't know if it's like a cool, like, is it a cool risk or is it just like an unnecessary risk?
It feels like to me just like an unnecessary risk, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, in some cases it feels like that, but in other cases, like the upside of being a wizard is you can collect all of the arcane spells, which is something that no other class can do, because bards can only know so many and sorcerers could only know so many. I think artificers are the only exception, but their spell list is way more limited than a wizard. But a wizard can just have it all. Just choose from it from any given day as long as they have that spell book. It becomes like this cool, I don't know, it could be like a cool story hook if, you know, you got knocked unconscious during a combat and the creatures, when they fled, took your spell book and ran. Because then you still have all the spells you have memorized from your book for that day. You still have that full access to that arsenal, but that's just what you have to use until you get the spell book back. Or you have a spell book that has like a rare spell or your custom spell inside of it. It could be like the focus for other wizards to try to find your spell book and learn your spell. And then you can learn spells from other wizards in the same way. It becomes like this item that you could find and this reward that you could get that other classes can't get, you know?
I just had the weirdest idea for a wizard.
Okay.
What if your spell book is your skin? And you get to the level in which you can cast Shrink and Enlarge on the ink on your body. to like categorize them as tones across your skin. Creepy. I love it. How's someone gonna steal your skin? They're just gonna cut it off and whoa. They couldn't take all of it. You'd die. Wow. I guess they could, but you would die.
Yep.
Yeah, I would never intentionally have an NPC monster enemy go after a wizard's spellbook. Unless they were like prisoner or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd have a conversation with the wizard player.
Give them a ample opportunity to get it back. Pretty easily.
And there's what does it say in the rule book? Like they have a contingency for it, right? There's a contingency for wizards if something happens to their spellbook. Which is like, so Wizards has this idea that this could be a thing. It's in the sidebar on 114, replacing your book. So you could copy a spell from your own spellbook into another book. For example, if you want to make a backup copy of your spellbook. This is just like copying a new spell into your spellbook, but faster and easier since you understand your own notation and already know how to cast the spell. You need only spend 1 hour and 10 gold for each level of the copied spell. If you lose your spellbook, you could use the same procedure to transcribe the spells that you have prepared into a new spellbook. Filling out the remainder of your spellbook requires you to find new spells to do so as normal. For this reason, many wizards keep backup spellbooks in a safe place. Which is pretty brutal. That happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wizards.
Yeah. Going back to another topic that you had where you said your bard colleges and your wizard schools are similar. I think I'm the complete opposite in my world.
Whoa.
I think those two are very distinctly different in my world. I'm sorry to loop back to this late into the conversation, but like in my mind, what a bard does is a bard, especially like a player character bard, like maybe not like NPC. Like I don't, how classes are represented in worlds is something that I also have opinions on. But so we won't get into that. But I think of bards as people who key like magic and drive is about experiencing the world and telling stories. So each bard college is particularly going after a certain piece of the lived experience and notating and recording and passing down through word of mouth these traditions that exist in these different like spheres of culture. Yeah. Whereas wizards are more of learned, studied, and very specific magic study who don't need to have the lived experience outside of experimenting in their labs and pulling at magic and trying to make new magic work. So in that way, there could be a little overlap with like lore bards and wizards who are doing research on history and like the history of magic. But like as a whole, as like entities, they exist in very separate, distinct worlds that, definitely communicate, because a bard's going to want to know what the wizards are doing to tell other people what wizards are doing. But not in the like arcane formula way, but in the, this wizard learned how to pull the moon into the stratosphere. Or like this wizard's discovered how to rewrite reality with a spell. And after they did it, they died.
This is a Rick Monish deep cut, but there's a reason Philip lived so far away from Florencia.
Which is?
He was experimenting on new spells, which isn't something in my world that wizards aren't really supposed to be able to create new magics in my world. They're only supposed to like learn what has already been created from the bards. And so he was essentially like trying to Frankenstein spells and potion knowledge together to try to create this new transmutation thing, which is why it was so heavily protected and why he lived so far away from the town as a like high powered wizard.
I see. Okay.
Deep cut. Well,
cool.
we're at the 50-minute mark. What do you think?
Well.
Should we bless and bane? Sure I don't know that there's anything to bless and bane.
Yeah. In this one, I don't. Yeah.
I can sum up my thoughts on sorcerers pretty quickly. Okay. I don't know about you.
Let's try it. I think I can.
Okay.
Potentially.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, let's try it. If it bleeds too late, we'll cut in. We'll say, we'll continue this next time.
Okay.
Cool. We don't have to have hard rules here. This is our podcast.
There are no
We can decide.
Yeah. Okay. Sorcerers. Mm-hmm. Sorcerers in my world are much like bards, except they are the bards that never went to the lab. So they are chaotic and can't have struggles controlling their magic. Or if they have gained control of their magic, it's because of I like the idea with sorcerers in Rick Monish specifically that their history is like a verbal. It's like a verbal storytelling lore history. So either they're like birthed into a family of sorcerers who helps teach them based on the differences, or like communities kind of find them and help them by like finding little like sorcerer covens and like helping people learn to harness this raw energy in the same way that bards are able to like strum and tap into it in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess we could quickly tap into the books as well.
Yeah,
so we're remaining consistent, where it says unexplained powers and raw magic are the two headlines for sorcerers. Mm-hmm. So the first part is magic is part of every sorcerer, suffusing the body, mind, and spirit with latent power that awaits to be tapped. And they wield magic from all different types of chaos, and that sorcerers are rare in the world, and it is unusual to find a sorcerer who is not involved in the adventuring life in some way. People with magical power seething in their veins soon discover that the power doesn't like to stay quiet. Mm-hmm. A sorcerer's magic wants to be wielded, and it has a tendency to spill out in unpredictable ways if it's called on. So in my world, a sorcerer is like, if again, we're going back to that first episode of raw magic, a sorcerer is someone who like has like some part of just primal magic from the school that they're a bloodline of that's just embedded in them. And that is like the seed of everything they are. And it's chaotic and it comes out when it wants to. And a sorcerer has to learn how to deal with that, or like how to funnel that, how to control it.
Yeah.
If that's the story that they want to have, Again, this is a thing where baseline story of the world, but not necessarily what every sorcerer character has to be, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think the PHB and like Wizards of the Coast put a lot of pressure on sorcerers to have to come from a bloodline. You read it there, an ancient bloodline infused with magic. But I like the idea that like anyone from any family line can be born from this like raw magic. Maybe there's a celestial reason, or like a date, or like something the mom ate, like literally something simple. And I'm gonna throw this out there, this is vulgar, so like whatever. I do not like the idea that someone fucked a dragon and brought dragon bloodlines into like humanoid sorcerers. That's so fucked, and I will never let anyone play that in my world. Yeah,
that's fair. Yeah. And also I think that's like not even how it works in the general lore of it.
It pisses me off that that's like a trope.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Soapbox.
I think I think more of the idea of bloodlines they're using as innate, like as a cooler way of saying that something is innate, not necessarily that something has to be hereditary from some way back when history your ancestors passed down to you kind of idea, but more of a this is infused in you.
Mm-hmm.
You were born like this. No one understands how the power chooses who it chooses. It just chooses someone, and you are chosen, and you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
You know? And then people like, I like to think of the idea behind the lore for the books being like how people in the world rationalize what's happening. And so like in the Wizard's book, that's like how the general populace would rationalize a sorcerer suddenly becoming and being different than everything else around them. It's like, oh, it must be this crazy story where this magical thing in the way back when had something happen with these people, you know? It's like a Jaskier making the story up as they go kind of thing. Yeah. And everyone's like, oh yeah, that sounds reasonable. Yeah. That must be why it works.
Yeah.
Calling you out, evolutionary psychologists. Don't at me. Wow.
Did you see the tooth? Anyway,
maybe we just cut out that last part where I call out an entire field of psychology.
It's okay. I'm here for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that sorcerers are really rare in Rickmonish. At least not like I mean, it literally says right here on the PHP page that I have pulled up under unexplained powers, sorcerers are rare in the world. Like, I don't think that I take that into consideration in Rickmonish.
Yeah.
Again,
doesn't have to be in your world.
Take what you want from the books.
Yeah.
But also, surprisingly, I don't know that I've ever made an important NPC a sorcerer. So take that as you will.
Yeah. Sorcerers are weird to play, I think. I think it's a hard sell to be like, hey, you want to be a sorcerer when you could be a wizard?
Oh, I have a clockwork sorcerer. I love her. Trying to play a sorcerer in your game. Trying to play I don't know what the multi-class is called. A sorcerer paladin multi-class.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's weird to have. This is a tangent. I statted her at level 10 just to see where she would get. And then I scaled her back to level 1. And I'm like, why do I have a 14 strength? Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's actually like, I think it's a really potent build.
It is. I'm excited.
Really good.
Anyway.
Yeah, I also play sorcerers in my one-shot. And when I play in a one-shot, I will often be a sorcerer. And every time I play one, I'm like, I should really play this as a campaign character. Like, I'm having a lot of fun being a sorcerer. Then I never do.
I think what would make sorcerers better, Wizards of the Coast, don't at us, would be a little bit better, like, class and, like, subclass leveling features. I feel like some of, like, I don't really get stoked to be like level 5 when I'm a sorcerer. Like there isn't like, it's like, oh, I get some more meta magic or like, you know, like there isn't like a lot of like big sells for me, at least in those features. And like like a swashbuckler rogue, I will choose that every day of the week over a sorcerer because you can just not be hit and leave people space. Like there's just all these things you can do. I'm on a tangent now. I'm sorry.
It's because rogues get something every single level.
Yeah.
And monks get something every single level. But most full spellcasters don't get things every single level because the thing they get on the levels they don't get things is access to a new level of spell slot, which is a huge amount of new things for them to read and understand and pick from. And I think it's one of those things where I always thought like, man, these don't get a lot of things. But every time I play one, I'm like, oh, I get so many things. Like this is so much more than it seems. But again, I think that's another topic.
It's another topic. Yeah. But yeah, sorcerers, just, I think there is a theme that does kind of match, you know, the general lore of the books here and that like, bloodlines are a thing, but maybe not. But like they're just, as a person, are inherently magical. Random question. If someone did a like scan for magic in a room and you had a sorcerer there, would they be detected as a magic item?
Not as a magic item, But if people were detecting magic, like in general, probably.
Would bards
like,
or wizards?
In that sense, yes. Are you talking like the detect magic spell or like a feature that detects magic?
I don't know. I'm just skewballing off the top of my dome. Like, well,
I have to read the detect magic spell.
If they are inherently magic themselves, then I feel like the detect magic spell, they would light up like a firecracker. But wizards and bards would maybe have like their fingers or their mouths like dripping with magic, but wouldn't themselves be inherently magical.
Yeah, the magic around them would be like around the tool that they use to cast their spells, like the spell book or the bard instrument or the bard like painting set or the fire juggler's kit.
You get it.
Where, the sorcerer would just be like, wow, 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 wow. Like, so much magic everywhere. Like, this is a problem.
Yeah.
It's like, you look at raw magic, you look at the weave. It's this thing in human form.
Exactly.
It's there. Yeah. I think I would. But not if it was like extremely detrimental.
Yeah.
It's always one of those things. It's like, that would be cool to have happen. Is someone going to exploit this, or am I going to now have to use an NPC down the line who's going to be like, well, I know you're the sorcerer. I'm detecting magic right now, and you're like a beacon. Like, what are you doing?
It's sort of like when you wear the ring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would, again, be a conversation I'd have with the sorcerer character above table.
I'm getting so many ideas from this episode. I love it so much. Instead of blessings and banes, should we just end with like key takeaways? If we were going to sum up,
let's go with key takeaways.
Providing space at your DM table for your players to play an arcane magic class minus artificers, which we didn't get to. What would be like some of the key takeaways we would give fellow lore keepers and world builders as like things to think about?
Yeah, beyond our general, it's your table, use your discretion. Like, talk to your players if you're doing weird stuff with your arcane. Like, if you have a world set up, which like Mystic's world, where the raw magic is everywhere, and you have this like category of bard, sorcerer, wizard, and like developing wizard spells is something that people don't really smile upon. Like, have that conversation with the wizard player before you start the game and be like, hey, this is what's happening. You could still do all the cool stuff, but this is how it might pan out. Yeah, I guess the takeaway, as always, talk to your players. Talk to your players. Surprises? There's time for surprises. It's not when it comes to your class.
I would say another takeaway, don't take away the bard's instrument of power or the wizard's spell book. Like, that's just, unless you really want them to quit your game, like, don't do it. I would say don't do it.
Or unless it's part of like a single adventure where everyone's out their things, where, you have to surrender your weapons to go into the party. And, people in your world are wise to magic and also take the magic wielder's stuff. And then, when it's something that is communicated and it's very much this is a temporary thing, you're getting them back. That's fine. Don't take it away permanently and be like, now you can't do magic.
I would say it's more evil to burn a wizard's spellbook in front of them than it is to kick a player when they're unconscious.
That being said, it's potentially a better consequence than killing the character.
That's true. But you effectively have killed them. Especially what if you were like a level 15 wizard?
Yeah.
And your spellbook just... Anyway.
Then you talk to your DM about how you've been secretly inscribing a backup spellbook somewhere.
So
and you just have it, You mark off the cost of gold. Bada bing, bada boom. Spellbook's back.
You talk to your player.
Circle
back.
Yeah.
This is just a personal soapbox. Don't get creepy with sorcerer's lineage. Don't get weird with it. Don't.
Yeah. Gauge everyone's comfort level at your table. And maybe read the room.
Read the room.
You don't make it weird.
Don't Make it weird. Just because I want to play a draconic bloodlined dragonborn sorcerer doesn't mean my mommy and daddy were one black dragon and my mom was a tabaxi, you know? Like,
no. It means that the black dragon chose someone in your lineage to be one of their champions, maybe made them a half dragon at some point after.
Yep.
You know, something happens, or your lineage slayed a dragon and the blood that spilt on them turned them into a dragonborn and afflicted your family with the bloodline.
Toss the tropes.
Yeah, maybe a dragon blessed you when you were being conceived. And, you know, your mom... I don't want to go down this tangent. It booped you and it was like, you have my blessing. Or your child is cursed to be one of the dragon cult. And then it flies away and it's ominous. You know?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Really, magic is cool. And you can do a lot of things with it when you're making your world. Maybe think about it a little bit, but
yeah.
I haven't dove into all of this stuff. I've never had a sorcerer. Well, that's not true. I had a sorcerer the first time I built Rick Bonish. But, like, they didn't dive into the backstory or the lore, so I didn't think about any of this stuff. It's just come up as we've played in the world, and it's not like you don't have to know it all at the beginning.
Absolutely don't have to have it set in stone before you start.
Yeah.
Just, you know, if someone's into it, make it up as you go, and then make it make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, you have to be good at improv to do that. If you're not an improv person, maybe have an idea or maybe say, I don't know yet to your player when they ask and be like, we will work on that.
That's true, but you can make it up as you go and in your session prep or between sessions as well. And yeah, always just being like, I'm not sure. Let me have a moment to think about that. Or let's take a snack break and I'll tell you when you get back, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Any other nuggets of knowledge?
Well, I think that's good. Sorry, Artificer listeners. We'll get to you later.
We'll get to you.
Put your magic in your suitcase for next time.
Mm-hmm. We appreciate you all. Thank you for tuning in, listening, watching, however you're consuming this media. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at BothIsGoodPod. You can find our parent company, Ottoman Studio, who we happen to just both be on the, admin team for on TikTok and YouTube and Twitch, which is where we stream the video version of this podcast. If you're listening, if you're watching, you already know. We also have, what else do we have? We have something else. Patreon.
Yeah, that thing. If you have a couple bucks in the means to and want to support us financially, don't feel like you have to, but it would be greatly appreciated. And you get cool things.
We have tiers from $1 all the way up to $30. Whatever you can safely give.
If you have cool ideas that we could add to that Patreon that are feasible, add us with those.
That's a good ad.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
Yeah.
Both is good.
Both is good.